only to bring Merry and Pippin with marvelous speed and in the nick of time to Fangorn, where otherwise they would never have come at all. Also, they have filled themselves with new doubts that disturb their plans. No tidings of the battle will come to Mordor, thanks to the horsemen of Rohan, but the Dark Lord knows that 2 hobbits were taken in Emin Muil and borne away towards Isengard against the will of his own servants. He now has Isengard to fear, as well as Minas Tirith. If Minas Tirith falls, it will go ill with Saruman. It is a pity that our friends lie in between, said Gimli. If no land... The victor would emerge stronger than either, and free from doubt, said Gandalf. But Isengard cannot fight Mordor, unless Saruman first obtains the ring. That he will never do now. He does not yet know his peril. There is much that he does not know. He was so eager to lay his hands on his prey that he could not wait at home, and he came forth to meet and to spy on his messengers. But he came too late for once, and the battle was over and beyond his help before he reached these parts. He did not remain here long. I took into his mind, and I see his doubt. He has no woodcraft. He believes that the horsemen slew and burned all upon the field of battle, but he does not know whether the orcs were bringing any prisoners or not, and he does not know of the quarrel between his servants and the orcs of Mordor. Nor does he know of the winged messenger, cried Legolas.
I shot him with the bow of Galadriel above San Gebir, and I felled him from the sky. He filled us all with great fear. What new terror is this?
One that you cannot slay with arrows, said Gandalf. Ye only slew his steed. It was a good deed, but the rider was soon horsed again. For he was a Nazgul, one of the 9, who ride now upon winged steeds. Soon their terror will overshadow the last armies of our friends, cutting off the sun. But they have not yet been allowed to cross the river. And Saruman does not know of his new shape in which the ring-wraiths have been clad. His thought is ever on the ring. Was it present in the battle? Was it found? What if Theoden, Lord of the Mark, should come by it and learn of its power? That is the danger that he sees, and he has fled back to Isengard, to double and treble his assault on Rohan. And all the time there is another danger, close at hand, which he does not see. Busy with his fiery thoughts, he has forgotten Treebeard.
Now you speak to yourself again, said Aragorn with a smile. Treebeard is not known to me, and I have guessed part of Saruman's double treachery, yet I do not see in what way the coming of 2 hobbits to Fangorn has served, save to give us a long and fruitless chase, cried Gimli.
To know first, was it you, Gandalf, or Saruman that we saw last night? You certainly did not see me, answered Gandalf. Therefore I must guess that you saw Saruman. Evidently we look so much alike that your desire to make an incurable dent in my hat must be excused, said Gimli.
Gandalf laughed again.
Yes, my good dwarf,
he said.
It is a comfort not to be mistaken at all points. Do I not know it only too well? But of course I never blamed you for your welcome of me. How could I do so, who have so often counselled my friends to suspect even their own hands when dealing with the enemy? Bless you, Gimli, son of Gloin. Maybe he will see us both together one day and judge between us.
But the hobbits,
Legolas broke in.
We have come far to seek them, and you seem to know where they are. Where are they now?
With Treebeard and the Ents, said Gandalf.
The Ents! Exclaimed Aragorn. Then there is truth in the old legends about the dwellers in the deep forests and the giant shepherds of the trees. Are there still Ents in the world? I thought they were only a memory of ancient days, if indeed they were ever more than a legend of Rohan.
A legend of Rohan,
cried Legolas.
Nay, every elf in Wilderland has sung songs of the old Onodrin and their long sorrow. Yet even among us they are only a memory. If I were to meet one still walking in this world, then indeed I should feel young again. But Treebeard, that is only a rendering of Fangorn into the common speech. Yet you seem to speak of a person. Who is Treebeard?
"Ah, now you are asking much," said Gandalf. "The little that I know of his long, slow story would make a tale of which we have no time now. Treebeard is Fangorn, the guardian of the forest. He is the oldest of the Ents, the oldest living thing that still walks beneath the sun upon this Middle-earth. I hope indeed, Legolas, that you may yet meet him. Merry and Pippin have been fortunate. They met him here, even where we sit, for he came here 2 days ago and bore them away to his dwelling far off by the roots of the mountains. He often comes here, especially when his mind is uneasy, and rumors of the world outside trouble him. I saw him 4 days ago striding among the trees, and I think he saw me, for he paused. But I did not speak, for I was heavy with thought and weary after my struggle with the Eye of Mordor. And he did not speak either, nor call my name. Said Gimli. Dangerous! Cried Gandalf. So am I. Very dangerous. More dangerous than anything you will ever meet, unless you are brought alive before the seat of the Dark Lord. And Aragorn is dangerous, and Legolas is dangerous. You are beset with dangers, Gimli, son of Glóin, for you are dangerous yourself in your own fashion. Certainly the forest of Fangorn is perilous, not least to those that are too ready with their axes. And Fangorn itself, he is perilous too, yet he is wise and kindly nonetheless. But now his long, slow wrath is brimming over, and all the forest is filled with it. The coming of the hobbits and the tidings that they brought have spilled it. It will soon be running like a flood, but its tide is turned against Saruman and the axes of Isengard. A thing is about to happen which has not happened since the elder days. The Ents are going to wake up and find that they are strong.
Asked Legolas in astonishment.
Oh, I do not know, said Gandalf. I do not think they know themselves. I wonder.
He fell silent, his head bowed in thought. The others looked at him. A gleam of sun through fleeting clouds fell upon his hands, which lay now upturned on his lap. They seemed to be filled with light as a cup is with water. At last he looked up and gazed straight at the sun.
The morning is wearing away,
he said.
Soon we must go.
Do we go to find our friends and see Treebeard? Asked Aragorn.
No, said Gandalf. That is not the road that you must take. I have spoken words of hope, but only of hope. Hope is not victory. War is upon us and all our friends, a war in which only the use of the ring could give us surety of victory. It fills me with great sorrow and great fear, for much shall be destroyed, and all may be lost. I am Gandalf, Gandalf the White, but black is mightier still.
He rose and gazed out eastward, shading his eyes, as if he saw things far away that none of them could see. Then he shook his head.
No,
he said in a soft voice.
It has gone beyond our reach. Of that at least let us be glad. We can no longer be tempted to use the ring. We must go down to face a peril near despair. Yet that deadly peril is removed.
He turned.
Come, Aragorn, son of Arathorn,
he said.
Do not regret your choice in the valley of Eminmuil, nor call it a vain pursuit. You chose amid doubts the path that seemed right. The choice was just, and it has been rewarded, for so we have met in time, who otherwise might have met too late. But the quest of your companions is over. Your next journey is marked by your given word. You must go to Edoras and seek out Theoden in his hall, for you are needed. The light of Anduril must now be uncovered in the battle for which it has long waited. There is war in Rohan, and worse, evil. It goes ill with Theoden.
Said Legolas.
I did not say so,
said Gandalf.
Who knows? Have patience. Go where you must go, and hope. To Edoras. I go thither also.
It is a long way for a man to walk, young or old, said Aragorn. I fear the battle will be over long ere I come there.
We shall see,
said Gandalf.
Will you come now with me?
Yes. We will set out together, said Aragorn. But I do not doubt that you will come here before me if you wish. He rose and looked long at Gandalf. The others gazed at them in silence as they stood there facing one another. The grey figure of the man, Aragorn, son of Arathorn, was tall and stern as stone, his hand upon the hilt of his sword. He looked as if some king out of the mists of the sea had stepped upon the shores of lesser men. Before him stooped the old figure, white, shining now as if with some light kindled within, bent, laden with years, but holding a power beyond the strength of kings. Do I not say truly, Gandalf, said Aragorn at last, that you could go whithersoever you wished quicker than I? In this I also say, you are our captain, and our banner. The Dark Lord has 9, but we have one, mightier than they, the White Rider. He has passed through the fire and the abyss, and they shall fear him. We will go where he leads.
Yes. Together we will follow you,
said Legolas.
But first it would ease my heart, Gandalf, to hear what befell you in Moria. Will you not tell us? Can you not stay even to tell your friends how you were delivered?
I have stayed already too long,
answered Gandalf.
Time is short, but if there were a year to spend, I would not tell you all,
said Gimli.
Come, Gandalf, tell us how you fared with the Balrog. Name him not,
said Gandalf, and for a moment it seemed that the cloud of pain passed over his face, and he sat silent, looking old as death.
Long time I fell,
he said at last slowly, as if thinking back with difficulty.
Long I fell, and he fell with me. His fire was about me. I was burned. Then we plunged into the deep water, and all was dark. Cold it was as the tide of death. Almost it froze my heart. Deep is the abyss that is spanned by Durin's bridge, and none has measured it,
said Gimli.
Yet it has a bottom, beyond light and knowledge, said Gandalf. Thither I came at last, to the uttermost foundations of stone. He was with me still. His fire was quenched, but now he was a thing of slime, stronger than a strangling snake. We fought far under the living earth, where time is not counted. Ever he clutched me, and ever I hewed him, until at last he fled into dark tunnels. They were not made by Durin's folk, Gimli son of Glóin. Far, far below the deepest delvings of the dwarves, the world is gnawed by nameless things. Even Sauron knows them not. They are older than he. Now I have walked there, but I will bring no report to darken the light of day. In that dark despair my enemy was my only hope, and I pursued him, clutching at his heel. Thus he brought me back at last to the secret ways of Khazad-dûm. Too well he knew them all. Ever up now we went, until we came to the endless stair,
said Gimli.
It was made, and it had not been destroyed,
said Gandalf.
From the lowest dungeon to the highest peak it climbed, ascending in unbroken spiral in many thousand steps, until it issued at last in Durin's tower, carved in the living rock of Zirak-Zigil, the pinnacle of Silvertime. There upon Celebdil was a lonely window in the snow, and before it lay a narrow space, a dizzy eyrie above the mist of the world. The sun shone fiercely there, but all below was wrapped in cloud. Out he sprang, and even as I came behind, he burst into new flame. There was none to see, or perhaps in after ages songs would still be sung of the Battle of the Peak.
Suddenly Gandalf laughed.
But what would they say in song? Those that looked up from afar thought that the mountain was crowned with storm. Thunder they heard, and lightning, they said, smote upon Celebdil, and leapt back broken into tongues of fire. Is not that enough? A great smoke rose about us, vapour and steam. Ice fell like rain. I threw down my enemy, and he fell from the high place, and broke the mountain side where he smote it in his ruin. Then darkness took me, and I strayed out of thought and time. And I wandered far on roads that I will not tell. Naked I was sent back, for a brief time, until my task is done. And naked I lay upon the mountain top. The tower behind was crumbled into dust, the window gone. The ruined stair was choked with burned and broken stone. I was alone, forgotten, without escape from the hard horn of the world. There I lay, staring upward, while the stars wheeled over, and each day was as long as a life age of the earth. Faint to my ears came the gathered rumour of all lands. The springing and the dying, the song and the weeping, the slow, everlasting groan of overburdened stone. And so at the last, Gwaihir the Windlord found me again, and he took me up and bore me away. Ever am I fated to be your burden, friend of need, I said. A burden you have been, he answered, but not so now. Light as a swan's feather in my claw you are. The sun shines through you. Indeed, I do not think you need me any more. Were I to let you fall, you would float upon the wind. Do not let me fall! I gasped, for I felt life in me again. Bear me to Lothlorien. That indeed is the command of the Lady Galadriel, who sent me to look for you, he answered. Thus it was that I came to Caras Galadhon, and found you but lately gone. I tarried there in angeless time of that land where days bring healing, not decay. Healing I found, and I was clothed in white. Counsel I gave, and counsel took. Thence by strange roads I came, and messages I bring to some of you. To Aragorn I was bidden to say this. Where now are the Dunedain? Elessar, Elessar. Why do the kinsfolk wander afar? Near is the hour when the lost should come forth, and the grey company ride from the north. But dark is the path appointed to thee. The dead watch the road that leads to the sea. To Legolas she sent this word. Legolas Greenleaf, long under tree, in joy thou hast lived. Beware of the sea. If thou hearest the cry of the gull on the shore, thy heart shall then rest in the forest no more.
Gandalf fell silent and shut his eyes.
Then she sent me no message,
said Gimli and bent his head.
Dark are her words,
said Legolas.
That is no comfort.
Said Gimli. Said Legolas.
Yes, if she had naught else to say. What is that?
Said Gandalf, opening his eyes.
Yes, I think I can guess what her words may mean. Your pardon, Gimli, I was pondering the messages once again. But indeed she sent words to you, and neither dark nor sad. To Gimli, son of Gloin, she said, give his lady's greeting. Lockbearer, wherever thou goest, my thought goes with thee. But have a care to lay thine axe to the right tree. Gandalf,
cried the dwarf, capering as he sang loudly in the strange dwarf tongue.
Come,
He shouted, swinging his axe.
it is now sacred. Let us find one that is right to cleave. That will not be far to seek,
Said Gandalf, rising from his seat.
Come, we have spent all the time that is allowed to a meeting of parted friends. Now,
They spoke no more words, until they stood again upon the grass beyond the eaves of Fangorn. There was no sign of their horses to be seen.
They have not returned.
Said Legolas.
It will be a weary walk.
I shall not walk. Time presses.
Said Gandalf. Then, lifting up his head, he gave a long whistle. So clear and piercing was the note that the others stood amazed to hear such a sound come from those old bearded lips. 3 times he whistled. And then, faint and far off, it seemed to them that they heard the whinny of a horse, borne up from the plains upon the eastern wind. They waited wondering. Before long there came the sound of hoofs. At first hardly more than a tremor of the ground, perceptible only to Aragorn as he lay upon the grass, then growing steadily louder and clearer to a quick beat.
There is more than one horse coming.
Said Aragorn. Said Gandalf.
There are 3.
Said Legolas, gazing out over the plain.
See how they run. There is Hasselful, and there is my friend Arod beside him. But there is another that strides ahead, a very great horse. I have not seen his like before.
Nor will you again.
Said Gandalf.
That is Shadowfax. He is the chief of the Meras, lord of horses, and not even Theoden, king of Rohan, has ever looked on a better. Does he not shine like silver, and run as smoothly as a swift stream? He has come to me, the horse of the White Rider. We are going to battle together.
Even as the old wizard spoke, the great horse came striding up the slope towards them. His coat was glistening, and his mane flowing in the wind of his speed. The 2 others followed, not now far behind. As soon as Shadowfax saw Gandalf, he checked his pace and whinnied loudly. Then, trotting gently forward, he stooped his proud head and nuzzled his great nostrils against the old man's neck. Gandalf caressed him.
It is a long way from Rivendell, my friend,
He said,
but you are wise and swift and come at need. Far let us ride now together, and part not in this world again.
Soon the other horses came up and stood quietly by, as if awaiting orders.
We go at once to Meduseld, the hall of your master, Theoden,
Said Gandalf, addressing them gravely. They bowed their heads.
Time presses, so with your leave, my friends, we will ride. We beg you to use all the speed that you can. Hasselful can bear Aragorn and Arod Legolas. I will set Gimli before me, and by his leave, Shadowfax shall bear us both. We will wait now only to drink a little.
Now I understand a part of last night's riddle.
Said Legolas as he sprang lightly upon Arod's back.
Whether they fled at first in fear or not, our horses met Shadowfax, their chieftain, and greeted him with joy. Did you know that he was at hand, Gandalf?
Yes, I knew,
Said the wizard.
I bent my thought upon him, bidding him to make haste, for yesterday he was far away in the south of this land. Swiftly may he bear me back again.
Gandalf spoke now to Shadowfax, and the horse set off at a good pace, yet not beyond the measure of the others. After a little while they turned suddenly, and choosing a place where the banks were lower, he waded the river, and then led them away due south into a flat land, treeless and wide. The wind went like grey waves through the endless miles of grass. There was no sign of road or track, but Shadowfax did not stay or falter.
He is steering at a straight course now to the halls of Theoden, under the slopes of the White Mountains,
Said Gandalf.
It will be quicker so. The ground is firmer in the East Emnet, where the chief northward track lies, across the river. But Shadowfax knows the way through every fen and hollow.
For many hours they rode on through the meads and riverlands. Often the grass was so high that it reached above the knees of the riders, and their steeds seemed to be swimming in a grey-green area. They came upon many hidden pools, and broad acres of sedge waving above the net and treacherous bogs. But Shadowfax found the way, and the other horses followed his swath. Slowly the sun fell from the sky down into the west. Looking out over the great plain, far away, the riders saw it for a moment like a red fire sinking into the grass. Low upon the edge of sight, shoulders of the mountains glinted red upon either side. A smoke seemed to rise up and darken the sun's disk to the hue of blood, as if it had kindled the grass as it passed down under the rim of earth.
"There lies the Gap of Rohan,"
said Gandalf.
"It is now almost due west of us. That way lies Isengard."
I see a great smoke.
Said Legolas.
"Battle and war,"
said Gandalf.
"Ride on!"
They rode on through sunset and slow dusk and gathering night. When at last they halted and dismounted, even Aragorn was stiff and weary. Gandalf only allowed them a few hours' rest. Legolas and Gimli slept, and Aragorn lay flat, stretched upon his back. But Gandalf stood, leaning on his staff, gazing into darkness, east and west. All was silent, and there was no sign or sound of living thing. The night was barred with long clouds, fleeting on a chill wind when they arose again. Under the cold moon they went on once more, as swift as by the light of day. Hours passed, and still they rode on. Gimli nodded and would have fallen from his seat if Gandalf had not clutched and shaken him. Hasuful and Arod, weary but proud, followed their tireless leader, a grey shadow before them, hardly to be seen. The miles went by. The waxing moon sank into the cloudy west. A bitter chill came into the air. Slowly in the east, the dark faded to a cold grey. Red shafts of light leapt above the black walls of the Emyn Muil far away upon their left. Dawn came, clear and bright. A wind swept across their path, rushing through the bent grasses. Suddenly Shadowfax stood still and neighed. Gandalf pointed ahead.
"Look!"
he cried, and they lifted their tired eyes. Before them stood the mountains of the south, white-tipped and streaked with black. The grasslands rolled against the hills that clustered at their feet, and flowed up into many valleys still dim and dark, untouched by the light of dawn, winding their way into the heart of the great mountains. Immediately before the travellers, the widest of these glens opened like a long gulf among the hills. Far inward, they glimpsed a tumbled mountain pass, with one tall peak. At the mouth of the vale, there stood like a sentinel, a lonely height. About its feet there flowed, as a thread of silver, the stream that issued from the dale. Upon its brow they caught, still far away, a glint in the rising sun, a glimmer of gold.
"Speak, Legolas,"
said Gandalf.
"Tell us what you see there before us."
Legolas gazed ahead, shading his eyes from the level shafts of the new-risen sun.
I see a white stream that comes down from the snows.
He said,
Where it issues from the shadow of the vale, a green hill rises upon the east. A dike and mighty wall and thorny fence encircle it. Within there rise the roofs of houses, and in the midst set upon the green terrace there stands aloft a great hall of men. And it seems to my eyes that it is thatched with gold. The light of it shines far over the land. Golden, too, are the posts of its doors. There men in bright mail stand. But all else within the courts are yet asleep.
"Medoras, those courts are called,"
said Gandalf.
"and Meduseld is that golden hall. There dwells Theoden, son of Thengel, king of the Mark of Rohan. We are come with the rising of the day. Now the road lies plain to see before us, but we must ride more warily, for war is abroad, and the Rohirrim, the horse lords, do not sleep, even if it seems so from afar. Draw no weapons, speak no haughty word, I counsel you all, until we are come before Theoden's seat."
The morning was bright and clear about them, and birds were singing when the travelers came to the stream. It ran down swiftly into the plain, and beyond the feet of the hills turned across their path in a wide bend, flowing away east to feed the Entwash far off in its reed-choked beds. The land was green. In the wet meads and along the grassy borders of the stream grew many willow trees. Already in the southern land they were blushing red at their fingertips, feeling the approach of spring. Over the stream there was a ford, between low banks much trampled by the passage of horses. The travelers passed over and came upon a wide rutted track leading towards the uplands. At the foot of the walled hill the way ran under the shadow of many mounds, high and green. Upon their western sides the grass was white as with a drifted snow. Small flowers sprang there like countless stars amid the turf.
Look,
Said Gandalf.
how fair are the bright eyes in the grass. Never mind they are called. Symbolmyrna, in this land of men, for they blossom in all the seasons of the year, and grow where dead men rest. Behold, we are come to the great barrows where the sires of Theoden sleep.
7 mounds upon the left, and 9 upon the right, said Aragorn. Many long lives of men it is since the Golden Hall was built. 500 times have the leaves fallen in Mirkwood at my home since then, said Legolas. And but a little while does that seem to us. But to the riders of the mark it seemed so long ago, said Aragorn, that the raising of this house is but a memory of song, and the years before are lost in the mist of time. Now they call this land their home, their own, and their speech is sundered from their northern kin. Then he began to chant, softly in a slow tongue unknown to the elf and dwarf. Yet they listened, for there was a strong music in it. That, I guess, is the language of the Rohirrim, said Legolas, for it is like to this land itself, rich and rolling in part, and else hard and stern as the mountains. But I cannot guess what it means, save that it is laden with the sadness of mortal men. It runs thus in the common speech, said Aragorn, as near as I can make it. Where now is the horse and the rider? Where is the horn that was blowing? Where is the helm and the hauberk, and the bright hair flowing? Where is the hand on the harp-string, and the red fire glowing? Where is the spring in the harvest, and the tall corn growing? They have passed like rain on the mountains, like a wind in the meadow. The days have gone down in the west behind the hills, and into shadow. Who shall gather the smoke of the deadwood burning, or behold the flowing years from the sea returning? Thus spoke a forgotten poet long ago in Rohan, recalling how tall and fair was Eorl the Young, and there were wings upon the feet of his steed, Felaroth, father of horses. So men still sing in the evening. With these words the travellers passed the silent mounds. Following the winding way up the green shoulders of the hills, they came at last to the wide, wind-swept walls and the gates of Edoras. There sat many men in bright mail, who sprang at once to their feet and barred the way with spears. "Stay, strangers here unknown," they cried in the tongue of the Riddermark, demanding the names and errand of the strangers. Wonder was in their eyes, but little friendliness, and they looked darkly upon Gandalf. "Well do I understand your speech," he answered in the same language.
Yet few strangers do so. Why then do you not speak in the common tongue, as is the custom in the West, if you wish to be answered?
"It is the will of Theoden King that none should enter his gates save those who know our tongue and are our friends," replied one of the guards. "None are welcome here in days of war but our own folk, and those that come from Mundburg in the land of Gondor. Who are you that come heedless over the plain, thus strangely clad, riding horses like to our own horses? Long have we kept guard here, and we have watched you from afar. Never have we seen other riders so strange, nor any horse more proud than is one of these that bear you. He is one of the Meras, unless our eyes are cheated by some spell. Say, are you not a wizard, some spy from Saruman, or phantoms of his craft? Speak now and be swift." "We are not phantoms," said Aragorn. "Nor do your eyes cheat you, for indeed these are your own horses that we ride, and you knew well ere you asked, I guess. But seldom does thief ride home to the stable. Here are Hasufel and Arod, that Eomer, the third Marshal of the Mark, lent to us only 2 days ago. We bring them back now, even as we promised him. Has not Eomer returned and given warning of our coming?" A troubled look came into the guard's eyes. "Of Eomer I have naught to say," he answered. "If what you tell me is truth, then doubtless Theoden will have heard of it. Maybe your coming was not wholly unlooked for, but it is 2 nights ago that Wormtongue came to us and said that by the will of Theoden no stranger should pass these gates.
Wormtongue,
said Gandalf, looking sharply at the guard.
Say no more. My errand is not to Wormtongue, but to the Lord of the Mark himself. I am in haste. Will you not go or send to say that we are come?
His eyes glinted under his deep brows as he bent his gaze upon the man. Yes, I will go, he answered slowly. But what name shall I report, and what shall I say of you? Old and weary you seem now, and yet you are fell and grim beneath, I deem.
Well do you see and speak, said the wizard. For I am Gandalf. I have returned, and behold, I too bring back a horse. Here is Shadowfax the Great, whom no other hand can tame, and here beside me is Aragorn, son of Arathorn, the heir of the kings, and it is to Mundburg that he goes. Here also are Legolas the elf, and Gimli the dwarf, our comrades. Go now and say to your master that we are at his gates, and would have speech with him, if he will permit us to come into his hall.
Strange names you give indeed, but I will report them as you bid, and learn my master's will, said the guard. Wait here a little while, and I will bring you such answer as seems good to him. Do not hope too much. These are dark days. He went swiftly away, leaving the strangers in the watchful keeping of his comrades. After some time he returned. Follow me, he said. Theoden gives you leave to enter, but any weapon that you bear, be it only staff, you must leave on the threshold. The door wardens will keep them. The dark gates were swung open. The travelers entered, walking in file behind their guide. They found a broad path paved with hewn stones, now winding upward, now climbing in short flights of well-laid steps. Many houses built of wood and many dark doors they passed. Beside the way, in a stone channel, a stream of clear water flowed, sparkling and chattering. At length they came to the crown of the hill. There stood a high platform above a green terrace, at the foot of which a bright spring gushed from a stone carved in the likeness of a horse's head. Beneath was a wide basin from which the water spilled, and fed the falling stream. Up the green terrace went a stair of stone, high and broad, and on either side of the topmost step were stone-hewn seats. There sat other guards, with drawn sword laid upon their knees. Their golden hair was braided on their shoulders. The sun was blazoned upon their green shields. Their long corselets were burnished bright, and when they rose, taller they seemed than mortal men. There are the doors before you, said the guide. I must return now to my duty at the gate. Farewell, and may the Lord of the Mark be gracious to you. He turned and went swiftly back down the road. The others climbed the long stair under the eyes of the tall watchman. Silent they stood now above, and spoke no word, until Gandalf stepped out upon the paved terrace at the stair's head. Then, suddenly, with clear voices, they spoke a courteous greeting in their own language. Hail, comers from afar, they said, and they turned the hilts of their swords toward the travellers in token of peace. Green gems flashed in the sunlight. Then one of the guards stepped forward and spoke in the common speech. I am the door ward of Theoden, he said. Hama is my name. Here I must bid you lay aside your weapons before you enter. Then Legolas gave into his hand his silver-hafted knife, his quiver, and his bow. Keep these well, he said, for they come from the Golden Wood, and the Lady of Lothlorien gave them to me. Wonder came into the man's eyes, and he laid the weapons hastily by the wall, as if he feared to handle them. None will touch them, I promise you, he said. Aragorn stood a while hesitating. It is not my will, he said, to put aside my sword, or to deliver Andúril to the hand of any other man. It is the will of Theoden, said Hama. It is not clear to me that the will of Theoden, son of Thengil, even though he be Lord of the Mark, should prevail over the will of Aragorn, son of Arathorn, Elendil's heir of Gondor. This is the house of Theoden, not of Aragorn, even were he king of Gondor in the seat of Denethor, said Hama, stepping swiftly before the doors and barring the way. His sword was now in his hand, and the point towards the strangers.
This is idle talk,
said Gandalf.
Needless is Theoden's demand, but it is useless to refuse. A king will have his way in his own hall, be it folly or wisdom.
Truly, said Aragorn, and I would do as the master of the house bade me, were this only a woodman's cot, if I bore now any sword but Andúril. Said Hama, ere you shall lay it, if you would not fight alone against all the men of Edoras.
Not alone,
said Gimli, fingering the blade of his axe, looking darkly upon the guard, as if he were a young tree that Gimli had a mind to fell.
Not alone. Come,
said Gandalf.
We are all friends here. Or should be, for the laughter of Mordor will be our only reward if we quarrel. My errand is pressing. Here at least is my sword, Goodman Hama. Keep it well. Glumdring it is called, for the elves made it long ago. Now let me pass. Come, Aragorn.
Slowly Aragorn unbuckled his belt, and himself set his sword upright against the wall. I set it, he said, but I command you not to touch it, nor permit any other lay hand on it. In this elvish sheath dwells the blade that was broken, that has been made again. Telchar first wrought it in the deeps of time. Death shall come to any man that draws Elendil's sword, save Elendil's heir. The guard stepped back and looked with amazement on Aragorn. It seems that you come with wings of song out of the forgotten days, he said. It shall be, Lord, as you command.
Well,
said Gimli.
If it has Andúril to keep it company, then my axe may stay here too, without shame.
And he laid it on the floor.
Now then, if all is as you wish, let us go and speak with your master.
The guard still hesitated. Your staff, he said to Gandalf. Forgive me, but that too must be left at the doors.
Foolishness,
said Gandalf.
Prudence is one thing, but discourtesy is another. I am old. If I may not lean on my stick as I go, then I will sit out here until it pleases Theoden to hobble out himself to speak with me.
Aragorn laughed. Every man has something too dear to trust to another. But would you part an old man from his support? Come, will you not let us enter? The staff in the hand of a wizard may be more than a prop for age, said Hama. He looked hard at the ash staff on which Gandalf leaned. Yet in doubt, a man of worth will trust to his own wisdom. I believe you are friends and folk worthy of honor, who have no evil purpose. You may go in. The guards now lifted the heavy bars of the doors and swung them slowly inwards, grumbling on their great hinges. The travelers entered. Inside it seemed dark and warm after the clear air upon the hill. The hall was long and wide and filled with shadows and half-lights. Mighty pillars upheld its lofty roof, but here and there bright sunbeams fell in glimmering shafts from the eastern windows, high under the deep eaves. Through the louvre in the roof, above the thin wisps of issuing smoke, the sky showed pale and blue. As their eyes changed, the travellers perceived that the floor was paved with stones of many hues. Branching runes and strange devices intertwined beneath their feet. They saw now that the pillars were richly carved, gleaming dully with gold and half-seen colours. Many woven cloths were hung upon the walls, and over their wide spaces marched figures of ancient legend. Some dim with years, some darkling in the shade. But upon one form the sunlight fell, a young man upon a white horse. He was blowing a great horn, and his yellow hair was flying in the wind. The horse's head was lifted, and its nostrils were wide and red as it neighed, smelling battle afar. Foaming water, green and white, rushed and curled about its knees. Behold, Eol the Young, said Aragorn. Thus he rode out of the north to the battle of the field of Celebrant. Now the four companions went forward, past the clear wood fire burning upon the long hearth in the midst of the hall. Then they halted. At the far end of the house, beyond the hearth and facing north towards the doors, was a dais with 3 steps, and in the middle of the dais was a great gilded chair. Upon it sat a man, so bent with age that he seemed almost a dwarf, but his white hair was long and thick and fell in great braids from beneath a thin golden circlet set upon his brow. In the centre upon his forehead shone a single white diamond. His beard was laid like snow upon his knees, but his eyes still burned with a bright light, glinting as he gazed at the strangers. Behind his chair stood a woman clad in white. At his feet upon the steps sat a wizened figure of a man, with a pale white face and heavy-lidded eyes. There was a silence. The old man did not move in his chair. At length Gandalf spoke.
Hail, Theoden, son of Thengam. I have returned. For behold, the storm comes, and now all friends should gather together, lest each singly be destroyed.
Slowly the old man rose to his feet, leaning heavily upon a short black staff with a handle of white bone. And now the stranger saw that, bent though he was still tall, and must in youth have been high and proud indeed.
I greet you,
He said.
and maybe you look for welcome. But truth to tell, your welcome is doubtful here, Master Gandalf. You have ever been a herald of woe. Troubles follow you like crows, and ever they often are the worse. I will not deceive you. When I heard that Shadowfax had come back riderless, I rejoiced at the return of the horse, but still more at the lack of the rider. And when Eomer brought the tidings that you had gone at last to your long home, I did not mourn. But news from afar is seldom sooth. Here you come again, and with you come evils worse than before, as might be expected. Why should I welcome you, Gandalf Stormcrow? Tell me that.
Slowly he sat down again in his chair.
You speak justly, Lord,
Said the pale man sitting upon the steps of the dais.
since the bitter tidings came that Theodred your son was slain upon the west marches. Your right hand, second marshal of the Mark. In Eomer there is little trust. Few men would be left to guard your walls if he had been allowed to rule. And even now we learn from Gondor that the Dark Lord is stirring in the east. Such is the hour in which this wanderer chooses to return. Why indeed should we welcome you, Master Stormcrow? Lath spell I name you. Ill news, and ill news is an ill guest, they say.
He laughed grimly, as he lifted his heavy lids for a moment and gazed upon the strangers with dark eyes.
You are held wise, my friend Wormtongue, and are doubtless a great support to your master.
Answered Gandalf in a soft voice.
Yet in two ways may a man come with evil tidings. He may be a worker of evil, or he may be such as leaves well alone and comes only to bring aid in time of need.
That is so.
Said Wormtongue.
But there is a third kind. Pickers of bones, meddlers in other men's sorrows, carrion fowl that grow fat on war. What aid have you ever brought, Stormcrow? And what aid do you bring now? It is aid from us that you sought last time that you were here. Then my lord bade you choose any horse that you wouldn't be gone, and to the wonder of all you took Shadowfax in your insolence. My lord was sorely grieved, yet to some it seemed that to speed you from the land the price was not too great. I guess it is likely to turn out the same once more. You will seek aid rather than render it. Do you bring men? Do you bring horses, swords, spears? That I would call aid. That is our present need. But who are these that follow at your tail? 3 ragged wanderers in grey, and you yourself the most beggar-like of the 4.
The courtesy of your hall is somewhat lessened of late, Theoden, son of Thengel.
Said Gandalf.
Has not the messenger from your gate reported the names of my companions? Seldom has any lord of Rohan received 3 such guests. Weapons they have laid at your doors that are worth many a mortal man, even the mightiest. Grey is their raiment, for the elves clad them, and thus they have passed through the shadow of great perils to your hall.
Then it is true, as Eomer reported, that you are in league with the sorceress of the Golden Wood.
Said Wormtongue.
It is not to be wondered at. Webs of deceit were ever woven in Dwemoldine.
Gimli strode a pace forward, but felt suddenly the hand of Gandalf clutch him by the shoulder, and he halted, standing stiff as stone.
In Dwemoldine in Lorien, seldom have walked the feet of men. Few mortal eyes have seen the light that lies there ever long and bright. Galadriel, Galadriel, clear as the water of your well, white is the star in your white hand, unmarred, unstained is leaf and land. In Dwymordine and Lorien, more fair than thoughts of mortal men.
Thus Gandalf softly sang, and then suddenly he changed. Casting his tattered cloak aside, he stood up and leaned no longer on his staff, and he spoke in a clear, cold voice.
The wise speak only of what they know, Grimar, son of Galmon. A witless worm you have become. Therefore be silent, and keep your forked tongue behind your teeth. I have not passed through fire and death to branding crooked words with a serving man to the lightning foes.
He raised his staff. There was a roll of thunder. The sunlight was blotted out from the eastern windows. The whole hall became suddenly dark as night. The fire faded to sullen embers. Only Gandalf stood there, standing white and tall before the blackened hearth. In the gloom they heard the hiss of Wormtongue's voice.
Did I not counsel you, Lord, to forbid his staff? That fool hammer has betrayed me.
There was a flash as if lightning had cloven the roof. Then all was silent. Wormtongue sprawled on his face.
Now, Theoden, son of Thengel, will you not hearken to me?
Said Gandalf.
Do you not ask for help?
He lifted his staff and pointed to a high window. There the darkness seemed to clear, and through the opening could be seen, high and far, a patch of shining sky.
Not all is dark. Take courage, Lord of the Mark, for better help you will not find. No counsel have I to give to those that despair, yet counsel I could give, and words I could speak to you. Will you hear them? They are not for all ears. I bid you come out before your doors, and look abroad. Too long have you sat in the shadows, and trusted to twisted tales and crooked promptings.
Slowly Theoden left his chair. A faint light grew in the hall again. The woman hastened to the king's side, taking his arm, and with faltering steps the old man came down from the dais and paced softly through the hall. Wormtongue remained lying on the floor. They came to the doors, and Gandalf knocked.
Open!
He cried.
The Lord of the Mark comes forth!
The doors rolled back, and a keen air came whistling in. A wind was blowing on the hill.
Send your guards down to the stairs foot,
said Gandalf.
and you, lady, leave him a while with me. I will care for him.
Go, Eowyn, sister-daughter, said the old king. The time of fear is past. The woman turned and went slowly into the house. As she passed the doors, she turned and looked back. Grave and thoughtful was her glance, as she looked on the king with cool pity in her eyes. Very fair was her face, and her long hair was like a river of gold. Slender and tall she was, with her white robe girt with silver, but strong she seemed, and stern as steel, a daughter of kings. Thus Aragorn, for the first time in the full light of day, beheld Eowyn, Lady of Rohan, and thought her fair, fair and cold, like a morning of pale spring that is not yet come to womanhood. And she now was suddenly aware of him, tall heir of kings, wise with many winters, grey-cloaked, hiding a power that yet she felt. For a moment still as stone she stood, then turning swiftly she was gone.
Now, Lord,
Said Gandalf.
look upon your land. Breathe the free air again.
From the porch upon the top of the high terrace, they could see beyond the stream the green fields of Rohan fading into distant grey. Curtains of wind-blown rain were slanting down. The sky above and to the west was still dark with thunder, and lightning far away flickered among the tops of hidden hills. But the wind had shifted to the north, and already the storm that had come out of the east was receding, rolling away southward to the sea. Suddenly, through a rent in the clouds behind them, a shaft of sun stabbed down. The falling showers gleamed like silver, and far away the river glittered like a shimmering glass. It is not so dark here, said Theoden.
No,
Said Gandalf.
nor does age lie so heavily on your shoulders, as some would have you think. Cast aside your pride.
From the king's hand, the black staff fell clattering on the stones. He drew himself up, slowly, as a man that is stiff from long bending over some dull toil. Now tall and straight he stood, and his eyes were blue as he looked into the opening sky. "Dark have been my dreams of late," he said, "but I feel as one new awakened. I would now that you had come before, Gandalf, for I fear that already you have come too late, only to see the last days of my house. Not long now shall stand the high hall which Brago, son of Eorl, built. Fire shall devour the high seat. What is to be done?"
Much,
said Gandalf.
But first send to Eomer. Do I not guess rightly that you hold him prisoner by the counsel of Grima, of him that all save you named the Worm-tongue?
"It is true," said Theoden. "He had rebelled against my commands and threatened death to Grima in my hall."
A man may love you and yet not love Worm-tongue or his counsels,
said Gandalf. "That may be. I will do as you ask. Call Hammer to me. Since he proved untrusty as a doorward, let him become an errand runner. The guilty shall bring the guilty to judgment," said Theoden, and his voice was grim. Yet he looked at Gandalf and smiled, and as he did so many lines of care were smoothed away and did not return. When Hammer had been summoned and had gone, Gandalf led Theoden to a stone seat, and then sat himself before the king upon the topmost stair. Aragorn and his companion stood nearby.
"There is no time to tell you all that you should hear,"
said Gandalf.
"Yet if my hope is not cheated, a time will come ere long when I can speak more fully. Behold, you are come into a peril greater even than the wit of Worm-tongue could weave into your dreams. But see, you dream no longer, you live. Gondor and Rohan do not stand alone. The enemy is strong beyond our reckoning, yet we have a hope at which he has not guessed."
Quickly now Gandalf spoke. His voice was low and secret, and none save the king heard what he said. But ever as he spoke, the light shone brighter in Theoden's eye, and at last he rose from his seat to his full height, and Gandalf beside him, and together they looked out from the high place towards the east.
"Verily,"
said Gandalf, now in a loud voice, keen and clear,
"that way lies our hope, where sits our greatest fear. Doom hangs still on a thread. Yet hope there is still, if we can but stand unconquered for a little while."
The others too now turned their eyes eastward. Over the sundering leagues of land far away they gazed to the edge of sight, and hope and fear bore their thoughts still on, beyond dark mountains to the land of shadow. Where now was the ring-bearer? How thin indeed was the thread upon which doom still hung. It seemed to Legolas as he strained his far-seeing eyes that he caught a glint of white, far away. Perchance the sun twinkled on a pinnacle of the Tower of God, and further still, endlessly remote, and yet a present threat, there was a tongue of flame. Slowly Theoden sat down again, as if weariness still struggled to master him against the will of Gandalf. He turned and looked at his great house.
"Alas,"
he said,
"that these evil days should be mine, and should come in my old age instead of what peace I have earned. Alas for Boromir the brave. The young perish, and the old linger, withering."
He clutched his knees with his wrinkled hands.
"Your fingers would remember their old strength better if they grasped a sword hilt,"
said Gandalf. Theoden rose and put his hand to his side, but no sword hung at his belt.
"Where has Grima stowed it?"
he muttered under his breath. Said a clear voice.
"It was ever at your service."
2 men had come softly up the stair and stood now a few steps from the top. Eomer was there. No helm was on his head, no mail was on his breast, but in his hand he held a drawn sword, and as he knelt, he offered the hilt to his master.
"How comes this?"
said Theoden sternly. He turned towards Eomer, and the men looked in wonder at him, standing now proud and erect. Where was the old man whom they had left crouching in his chair or leaning on his stick?
"It is my doing, Lord,"
said Hammer, trembling.
"I understood that Eomer was to be set free. Such joy was in my heart that maybe I have erred. Yet since he was free again and he a marshal of the mark, I brought him his sword as he bade me.
To lay at your feet, Lord,
said Eomer. For a moment of silence, Theoden stood looking down at Eomer as he knelt still before him. Neither moved.
Will you not take the sword?
Said Gandalf. Slowly Theoden stretched forth his hand. As his fingers took the hilt, it seemed to the watchers that firmness and strength returned to his thin arm. Suddenly he lifted the blade and swung it shimmering and whistling in the air. Then he gave a great cry. His voice rang clear as he chanted in the tongue of Rohan, a call to arms.
Arise now! Arise! Riders of Theoden! Dire deeds awake! Dark is eastward! Let horse be bridled, horn be sounded! Forth, Eorlingas!
The guards, thinking that they were summoned, sprang up the stair. They looked at their lord in amazement, and then as one man they drew their swords and laid them at his feet.
Commandos!
They said, cried Eomer.
it is a joy to us to see you return to your own.
Never again shall it be said, Gandalf, that you come only with grief.
Take back your sword, Eomer, sister son, said the king.
Go, Hama, and seek my own sword. Grima has it in his keeping. Bring him to me also. Now, Gandalf, you said that you had counsel to give, if I would hear it. What is your counsel?
You have yourself already taken it, answered Gandalf. To put your trust in Eomer rather than the man of crooked mind. To cast aside regret and fear. To do the deed at hand. Every man that can ride should be sent west at once. As Eomer counseled you, we must first destroy the threat of Saruman, while we have time. If we fail, we fall. If we succeed, then we will face the next task. Meanwhile, your people that are left, the women and children and the old, should fly to the refuges that you have in the mountains. Were they not prepared against just such an evil day as this? Let them take provision, but delay not, nor burden themselves with treasures, great or small. It is their lives that are at stake.
This counsel seems good to me now, said Theoden.
Let all my folk get ready. But you, my guests, truly you said, Gandalf, that the courtesy of my hall is lessened. You have ridden through the night, and the morning wears away. You have had neither sleep nor food. A guest house shall be made ready. There you shall sleep when you have eaten.
Nay, lord, said Aragorn.
There is no rest yet for the weary. The men of Rohan must ride forth today, and we will ride with them, axe, sword, and bow. We did not bring them to rest against your wall, Lord of the Mark, and I promised Eomer that my sword and his should be drawn together.
Now indeed there is hope for victory,
said Eomer.
Hope, yes,
said Gandalf.
But Isengard is strong, and other perils draw ever nearer. Do not delay, Theoden, when we are gone. Lead your people swiftly to the hold of Dunharrow in the hills.
Nay, Gandalf,
said the king.
You do not know your own skill in healing. It shall not be so. I myself will go to war, to fall in the front of battle if it must be. Thus shall I sleep better. Then even the defeat of Rohan will be glorious in song,
said Aragorn. The armed men that stood near clashed their weapons, crying, The Lord of the Mark will ride! Forth, Eorlingas!
But your people must not be both unarmed and shepherdless,
said Gandalf.
I will take thought of that ere I go,
answered Theoden.
Here comes my camp.
At that moment, Hama came again from the hall. Behind him, cringing between two other men, came Grima the Wormtongue. His face was very white. His eyes blinked in the sunlight. Hama knelt and presented to Theoden a long sword in a scabbard, clasped with gold and set with green gems.
Here, Lord, is Herugrim, your ancient blade,
he said.
It was found in this chest. Loath was he to render up the keys. Many other things there are which men have missed.
You lie,
said Wormtongue.
and this sword your master himself gave into my keeping.
And he now requires it of you again, said Theoden. Does that displease you?
Assuredly not, Lord.
Said Wormtongue.
I care for you and yours as best I may, but do not weary yourself or tax too heavily your strength. Let others deal with these irksome guests. Your meat is about to be set on the board. Will you not go to it?
I will, said Theoden, and let food for my guests be set on the board beside me. The host rides today. Send the heralds forth. Let them summon all who dwell nigh. Every man and strong lad able to bear arms, all who have horses, let them be ready in the saddle, at the gate, ere the 2nd hour from noon.
Oh, dear Lord!
Cried Wormtongue.
It is a beard. This wizard has bewitched you. Are none to be left to defend the golden hall of your fathers, and all your treasure? None to guard the Lord of the Mark?
If it is bewitchment, said Theoden, it seems to me more wholesome than your whisperings. Your leechcraft ere long would have me crawling on all fours like a beast. No, not one shall be left, not even Grima. Grima shall ride now too. Go, you have yet time to clean the rust from your sword.
Mercy, Lord!
Whined Wormtongue, grovelling on the ground.
Have pity on one worn out in your service. Send me not from your side. I at least will stand by you when all others have gone. Do not send your faithful Grima away.
You have my pity, said Theoden, and I do not send you from my side. I go myself to war with my men. I bid you come with me, and prove your faith. Wormtongue looked from face to face. In his eyes was the hunted look of a beast seeking some gap in the ring of his enemies. He licked his lips with a long pale tongue.
Such a resolve might be expected from a lord of the House of Aeol, old though he be,
he said.
But those who truly love him would spare his failing years. Yet I see that I come too late. Others, whom the death of my lord would perhaps grieve less, have already persuaded him. If I cannot undo their work, hear me at least in this, Lord. One who knows your mind and honors your commands should be left in Edoras. Appoint a faithful steward. Let your counselor Grima keep all things till your return. And I pray that we may see it, though no wise man will deem it hopeful.
Éomer laughed.
And if that plea does not excuse you from war, most noble Wormtongue,
He said,
what office of less honor would you accept? To carry a sack of meal up into the mountains if any man would trust you with it? Nay, Éomer, you do not fully understand the mind of Master Wormtongue,
said Gandalf, turning his piercing glance upon him.
He is bold and cunning. Even now he plays the game with peril and wins a throw. Hours of my precious time he has wasted already. Down, snake!
He said suddenly in a terrible voice.
Down on your belly. How long is it since Saruman bought you? What was the promised price? When all the men were dead, you were to pick your share of the treasure and take the woman you desire. Too long have you watched her under your eyelids and haunted her steps.
Éomer grasped his sword.
That I knew already.
He muttered.
For that reason I would have slain him before.